Enterprise Influencers, Perspectives from Technology Leaders.
Hello and welcome to the Enterprise Influencers podcast, where we explore the inner workings of large organizations and the people and technologies that help them get things done. Patrick, welcome back.
Hey, Giles. Good to see you, man.
What are we talking about today?
Giles, we're not going to have a guest today. So we've had some scheduling challenges, but I think we have a pretty interesting topic today. I know we've been talking a lot about AI, and we're going to continue talking about AI because that's the hot topic on everyone's mind right now.
Yep.
And we got to talking about how executives are really perceiving AI. So I think maybe not everyone, but a lot of people are familiar with like Gartner and the hype cycle and sort of all the things that relate to as technologies mature. And I think it's no doubt that we are in one of those cycles. Like AI is all the hype right now. And so the topic really is around like how are executives and particularly CEOs of organizations, how are they perceiving AI? And to walk us through that topic, we actually found a really good article, and we'll link to the article. It's from Fast Company, from the Modern CEO newsletter. Stephanie Mehta is the author of the article, and she's a CEO and chief content officer for Mansueto Ventures, which I think is some kind of venture capital firm or something of the sort. But Fast Company does a pretty good job of keeping on the pulse of technology, and I generally find their content to be quite enjoyable. But she's got a nice article, which the title of this article is, what is the title of this article, Giles? The leaders of IKEA, ServiceNow, Coursera, and Publicis Sapient offer different visions of how AI will impact their companies. And what we want to do is just let's see what these CEOs are saying, and Giles and I will give our unique perspective on their
Are they going to replace us entirely with robots, or is this something more productive?
I did tell you the way I came up with this topic is I literally put it into CoPilot, asked the AI to give us some suggestions on what to talk about, and this, folks, is what you...
Pretty good to me. I'm ready to be taken over.
I think with as much as you got going on right now,
I appreciate it for sure.
I could understand that. But
yeah,
if you're down for it, Giles, let's just jump in and I'll lay out the first CEO commentary here.
All right, go for it.
Let's do it.
Who's our first?
So the first company is actually Jesper Brodin. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. CEO of the Inca Group, which is the holding company that owns and operates the IKEA stores. So side note, before we get into this, IKEA is my absolute worst nightmare in a shopping experience. I cannot tell you how much I despise stepping into an IKEA. So
that's because it's a maze that you can't actually escape without. It forces you to go through the whole place.
Well,
even though there's nice little shortcuts, those shortcuts sometimes lead you back in a circle, and then you end up being there longer. It's crazy.
I think
I'm with you.
It's literally a maze, and instead of cheese at the end, they put Swedish meatballs. That is your reward for navigating the maze and getting
They're pretty good meatballs, though. For a furniture company, they're pretty good, right? We're not talking like gourmet.
You're right. They are good. They are good meatballs. If I'm going to go to IKEA for anything, it's going to be the meatballs and just the meatballs.
I don't know. It's also the premier place to buy dime bars.
I don't know what a dime
chocolate
bar is.
Oh, okay. Well, you should try it. It's good.
They're
very popular in the UK. And you know what? My wife likes to go to IKEA because I love buying the Kallax furniture, right, for my games and consoles and stuff like that. Like it's all Tetris stuff in my office. But anyway.
So my most sincere apologies to Jesper Brodin for completely trashing his company. But
But
okay,
then
well, let's
here,
see what,
it
now
has
let's
a
see what
place, right? I
Jesper
like
has to
it.
say about AI.
Yeah.
And I'll just read the quote here for our audience that is on the audios and the Spotifys and all the things. But so talking about AI, Jesper says it's deeply inspiring, deeply filled with potential, and deeply dangerous at the same time. For us, we've been using AI, but more in technical ways of automating customer service and improving our logistics operations. We want to deepen the dialogue with people around what they need in life and at home. You will see us be incredibly ambitious about making a contract with people on how we use data. You need to approve how we use your data so we can use it to your benefit. In our line of business, people search for products, finding and buying them. AI is about being accessible and making that process easy. People are looking for inspiration. That's another ball game when people are just browsing ideas, tips, and so on. IKEA sits on decades of massive learnings from being not only in dialogue, but doing real home visits and accumulating knowledge. And we want to apply machine learning to that. Some pretty interesting insights there, actually, Giles, I would say, from Jesper Broden, who runs his maze operation of furniture sales and meatball conglomerates.
That's true. A very positive message, though, I would say, right? I would say it's leaning towards the safe of, hey, we're not trying to do evil.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is fair. I like that. I like that. But
I like how he's talking about here a very short quote, but it hits on some really interesting topics. Number one, you've got a large retail operations with logistics that are incredibly complex, I'm sure.
Who are known, and they're known for doing excellent logistics, right? That's really how IKEA came into the market. So,
well, and the instructions alone are probably, just the instructions on the furniture assembly alone is logistics proof.
Yes, very true. Very true.
But he also talks about the contract with people on how we use data. And we've been seeing this a lot across industries, in social media, shopping experiences, Amazon, and there is massive amounts of data about people. And with GDPR and other sorts of things like that, regulatory compliance sort of things, that contract between people and how their data is being used can be incredibly important, and also has the potential to be incredibly misused by AI.
Yeah, who feeds the data source, right? And then what's influencing the data source? Hence the dangerous part of this quote, right? It's just, but at the same time, I would argue that Jesper here is playing it on the safe side. It's about facilitating ideas rather than making decisions, right? Which is key, I think, into how a lot of this stuff works. It's how CoPilot works, right? It's about providing ways to inspire and to make your work quicker and more efficient, as opposed to, hey, I'm going to do this for you.
Yeah. And I, for one, am I'm of the opinion, and I know not everyone shares this opinion, but I'm not going to rob any banks or murder anyone. And so I don't have really much to hide in my digital life.
You might argue it's too late, even if you did.
The concept of companies learning from my behavior and making helpful suggestions to me on, hey, you might like this thing, or because you just had a baby, you might be, and I did not just, we're not having any more babies, but just throwing it out as an example, here's some things that you might be interested in because of your phase in life or this or that. And, or
sure.
I just booked a trip to Argentina. I'm sure there's some things that we're going to be looking for, suggestions around things to do and places to go and things like that. And I'm all for these sort of helpful suggestions that the technology can deliver to me on my little device or whatever. But I know other people don't really. They're more fearful of that kind of thing, and they want to block that and maybe not have companies knowing more about themselves or their spouse than they do themselves.
Sure. And this is a very well thought out quote, right? Because it very much talks about essentially consent, right? So if you're willing, then we will have the tools to help and aid you. If you're not, then you get the standard experience that we provide today, right?
And this is why Amazon will win in the end, because they don't care if you're ready or not. Sorry, Jeff Bezos.
I have a neighbor who does a lot of this stuff and is very much in charge of the AI side of their customer service. And you're absolutely right.
I feel a subpoena like on its way based on this episode, Giles. I'm getting a little bit nervous.
I have a story that I'll tell you after this podcast about pretty much that. But anyway, we won't talk about that now.
So do we want to move on to the next CEO, Giles?
Maybe. Let's have a look more at this. They're pretty ambitious and they can contract people to approve the new status. Yeah, no, you're right. I guess the thing that concerns me about that is the machine learning of the decades of data, right? Because it starts off as a quote of, "Hey, I'm going to help you choose things," and the point of
it's not just
your point in life. By the way, we're all going to look at your past as long as you consent, and it makes it very hard.
Everything we've got about you.
And as a result, it makes it hard to know from my fragile human brain, what am I actually consenting to when I say yes?
Actually, that's a really good point, because I think most people think when they're consenting to something like, oh, I'm just consenting to you collecting data about what I'm typing on the keyboard. Like I gave you my name, my email address, and my phone number. But what I think they really don't realize is that especially these online commerce,
your browsing
e-commerce
habits,
companies,
what you've looked at, and
they know not just what you're doing on their site, but they're using tracking cookies and other sorts of things to know what you're doing on other sites and targeting those things to you. And like when you Google something about IKEA or any company, like they're going to be able to track you across multiple websites. It's scary how accurate of a profile, and maybe scary is that they can get about a person.
Clever. It's intelligently done, right? So and do you know what? This is the whole genesis of why GDPR exists, right? And then I'll tell you right now, there's legislation going through the States right now for a US equivalent of GDPR, which actually I thought it would never get done, but it's going through right now. And it's for these very reasons, right? So I can tell you that a video service that I use right now called Plex, they're currently being sued because they chose to use one of the Facebook tracking pixels on their video software to determine who is watching what and why, and then selling that data, right? Now, Plex provide a free service. You've got to get the money somehow, right?
Yeah.
So the reason why Facebook and everything else exists, right? You're not paying for it, but it does cost money. So they've got to get their money somehow.
And that if the service is free, then you are the product. You and your data are the product that company is selling, right?
That's right.
Like everyone should know that. Facebook's not free. Twitter's not free. X, LinkedIn, whatever
X. But do you know what? But like you, I'm a very boring person, right? I must be boring. They allow me to work in defense, which means I genuinely have nothing to hide. And even if I did, they would already know about it.
They'll find out about it anyway.
So they will find about it anyway, right? And because I work in defense, it's not just me, it's my wife, my family's family, and everything, right? So clearly there's nothing particularly exciting or controversial about me, because
you're a safe space, Giles.
The most dangerous thing about me is the color of my office.
All right, let's move on to our next CEO here. Sorry, I had a fly.
All right, so I'm going to try and do this justice as well. So this is Jeff Maggioncalda, I'm going to say. Maggioncalda,
I think
maybe?
That sounds close enough.
Yeah, I think it depends on where in the world you might be. So anyway, he's the CEO of Coursera, which is an online course provider, okay? So he says, we have already translated 4,000 courses into 18 languages, and it used to cost us $10,000 to translate one 10-hour course into one language. We can now do that for $20, which is amazing, right? The global accessibility of the top industry experts and university professors on Coursera is now no longer bound to people who speak English. That's also a very pertinent statement, I would say, in a minute. We'll talk about that. Then the models are getting better and better. We are doing more languages and we are retranslating the courses every time a new model or a better model comes out. So that is
very cool.
Think about the savings, think about the accessibility, right? For the longest time, right? You hear it now, even in the education industry, right? The education, especially here in the US, but also in the UK, I found it as well, right? University education and other kind of education is for the mega rich, those who can afford it, right? But here we have someone here they're running an online course provider to help you retrain yourself, right? And if something costs, if your native language was, say, Spanish or something like that, and you didn't know English straight away, and let's face it, the US does not have an official language as part of the melting pot that is the US.
Our official language was American.
Politics, I think, is our official language.
Let's not get into
that. But anyway, so as a result, if you can imagine what Coursera is probably going to do with this, right? If it costs them $10,000, then they're going to look at, is it even worth me translating it into the language? What is my user base?
Yeah.
If they need to do it into Swahili or whatever, should I bother? At 10K, you can look at your user base and go, I've only got 10 Swahili users, so I'm not going to do that.
For the native Klingon speakers, come on.
The native Klingons, exactly, or whatever. But by doing this, $20 per language, at that point, you start to think, why wouldn't I do this? Because that then gives me more marketing opportunities to then say, maybe I need to go after that Klingon market, right? Because for $20, I can open it up to myself, and why wouldn't I do that?
Yeah, and I think you also start to hit on it, right? It's a diversity and inclusion play, right? Like I can be much more inclusive with my training materials and where, to your point earlier, right? Like a lot of this stuff was only available in like large markets, like first world types of markets. There's a whole developing ecosystem, and many of the like African nations and like in Asia Pacific countries where like they may not have all the infrastructure built up, all the legacy like infrastructure, but they are very forward thinking when it comes to like mobile technologies and adopting new forms of technology. So this opens up a whole floodgate of opportunities for them to learn about the latest tech and adopt that. And I think nothing but good can come from this type of thing where we're really, what's the right word? We're like almost commoditizing that like translation capabilities and making it just more available to everyone. So yeah, agreed. And for me, I'm embarrassed to say, but I'm a typical American, right? Like I speak one language fluently. I speak American. I guess I speak English, but
that's not what the British would say.
You're right. You're very right with that. I don't speak proper English, that's for sure. Let's say if we wanted to diversify our podcast into the another market, like we could easily spend that $20, Giles, and have this in several different languages. So I think it opens up a lot of, obviously Coursera is a big content generator, right? They're focused on courses, and I guess I know them mostly around technology because that's the world I live in, but I'm sure they do other types of courses as well. I think that's a really cool use case for AI and machine learning to be able to deliver content to people that maybe they wouldn't have had access to otherwise.
And let's face it, if you look at the history of translating stuff, if you ever tried Dragon Speak or anything like that, even Google Translate or whatever, like back in the day, the biggest problem of translating things, because English is a very simplistic language, it doesn't really have the tones of feminine, masculine kind of things that you get in, say, Russian or whatever, or some kind of Germanic language. The good thing about AI is that it does, in fact, understand that stuff, and therefore it actually gets it should, you would hope, with the appropriate training, get the tone correct so that it doesn't offend or confuse people as that translation. So I totally believe that they say 10K to translate one 10-hour course. That would take a translator a long time to do, right?
And honestly, that probably was like hiring a native speaker to translate this content from the origin language to that native language, because you're right. Like I've used Google Translate and things like that for years and years. And the translations that you got out of those things were always at best moderately useful and sometimes comical. And I've even had situations where we were using Google Translate in a corporate communications type of setting where the translation was of a CEO's message was actually problematic so those kinds of things could happen. And that was quite a while ago. That was probably 10 plus years ago. But
in the company that we shared our company in the past that had the similar thing.
yeah, and definitely could happen. But I think what what the direction of travel seems to be, and I've even seen this myself, is that the large language model, language being the operative word there, are getting really good at the type of translation that we're talking about. They can take this, and in fact, I'll take something from my personal life, and this is just a good example. I've got a good friend. She's a first grade math teacher, and one of the things they do in their math classes, they celebrate. It's just like a fun thing, but they do like the Chinese New Year.
Yeah, my kids have been doing that too.
And part of the fun of that is they have these little envelopes and they've got the characters, Mandarin characters and stuff on them. And she was wanting to make sure, so she had some left over from the previous year. She was wanting to make sure that she didn't know what it said. And so she's, can anybody translate this? Does anybody know a native speaker or whatever? And I was like, send me a picture of it. So she sent me a picture. I put it into CoPilot and said, can you translate the characters on there? It took the image, translated the characters, and they were just fun stuff, peace, love, prosperity, that kind of stuff. And so like in 2 minutes, I was able to send her back the translation that she'd spent all day trying to find somebody to do. But this large language model was able to do it in literally seconds. And it was like, so just show, and I certainly know nothing about reading
as
Mandarin.
You've highlighted, you are no Mandarin expert.
So yeah, some pretty interesting stuff there.
So let's talk a little bit more before we move on then. So obviously this is a very positive message, certainly in terms of business, right? But of course, there is always a negative side to these things, or at least there is always an immediate kind of negative of like, what's going to happen to the translators, right? And then, so something that I read elsewhere, and a company that I was dealing with yesterday, in fact, for my own stuff, I won't go into the details of that. Maybe we'll get them on as a host at some point, or a guest at some point. But anyway, so is that, are they actually losing their jobs? Or because you're not going to stick a course that you've finely tuned with a professor that's well respected in their industry through AI and say, turn this into Spanish and then push it out. You're going to have someone check it, right?
Yeah,
first.
You would think so, but
you would hope so, right?
But I guess it's a matter of scale, right? You've got 4,000 courses, or I'm assuming that's what they've translated. So I'm guessing they probably have more courses than that. If I've got 10,000, 12,000 courses that need to be translated, I think you're starting to be like beyond the capacity of humans to check each of those things, right? Because it's one course is 10 hours, like
within a reasonable
40,000 hours.
Frame, yeah.
So that sounds like pretty good job security, right? I can sit here and check courses for the next 30 years and check out at the end of all that. But I don't think that's what they're doing. Yeah, my guess is that the quality checks on these things are minimal. Like I'm going to feed it through the AI, let it spit out the result at the end, and then maybe like at the end, like I'll respond to people who say, hey, you mistranslated this or something like that, but I'm probably not going to do too much in terms of like quality control on it, is my guess. But I don't work for Coursera, so I don't know.
I was going to say, I could see you maybe getting to that point after your confidence level was up. But there's a lot of reputational risk of just going, hey, shove this into a computer and shove it out.
But I think that's why they're retranslating it each time the better models come out. So they're getting
exactly.
Yeah,
right.
A little bit of feedback loop there.
But of course, and I guess what this guy that I was speaking to yesterday, these architects that are in this guy's company and everything else, right? They're essentially becoming, and we've heard this kind of title for a while now, prompting engineers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the downsides of having a translator doing your stuff is, right, they understand the language, but do they understand the content, right? Are they technical experts in CoPilot or whatever your course is about? And that can change the context, right? So you're going to get this, hopefully, the benefit of that, but you still have to train the AI behind the scenes to understand the context. But you probably only need to do that once.
And if we're talking specifically about translation, like there are scenarios where that specialized knowledge and understanding is going to be really important. So, for example, my wife is a nurse and she works in a medical setting in a hospital, and they have specific medical translators, and they have translators for a variety of different languages. We live in the Atlanta area, so there's a predominance of Spanish speaking people, but we also have a very large Indian, South Asian population. So there's very Hindi, Gujarati, all kinds of different languages there that need to be supported. And so that is a area where, a human translator that can actually sit down across from someone and talk and understand some of the medical jargon that's being talked about and can relay that information to a person with some human compassion and feeling is vitally important. And I don't think you're going to see those types of roles be replaced by AI, an AI bot, or like a little robot with a happy face on it or something like that. Like, so you've seen those at the trade shows where they roll around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, come on.
Doesn't mean it's not funny though.
Well,
but yeah, no, I actually think it's the same kind of message that we hear from others. Will it replace translators? Probably in their traditional roles. Yes. Is there still a need for as many of them? Maybe not. Although what you might argue, and because you could also argue if you're able to do this kind of stuff, then you also might be replacing the number of professors you need in the world, right? And things like that too. But you could also argue, actually, yeah, it's a downstream, but you could also argue, actually, this is making knowledge more globally accessible, as it states here. But it's also providing other revenue streams for people in a different way, right? Yeah. So is it really that black and white in terms of you're replacing translators, so therefore all the translators are out of work? I don't know that's the case, right? It's about reskilling so that you can then, will you need as many translators? Probably not. You'll probably need one per industry, per language, potentially, for double checking and making sure it's okay. Depending on the industry, depends how much you care. So medical stuff is life and death stuff. So you're not going to go past that. Maybe the technical stuff, it doesn't matter if it's entirely correct.
It may depend on what part of the country you're in too, honestly, because you may not be able to get qualified translators in every part of the country or part of the world, or languages that aren't as commonly spoken. So like you might see a consolidation of that kind of stuff and I think this does happen. There are translation services where you can get somebody on the phone. They may not be local, so you're talking to somebody like elsewhere. But actually, that's a good transition to our next quote about what you're talking about, reskilling. So our next quote is from Bill McDermott, who is the CEO of ServiceNow, my favorite enterprise cloud computing company. I'm just kidding. It's not my favorite company, but I've used ServiceNow at my existing company and other companies, and it's a cool platform. But what Bill has to share about AI is that technology fosters jobs. Thank you, Bill. It fosters opportunity. Thank you again. I think Gen AI is the biggest opportunity. It is the iPhone moment. As an Android user, I take exception to that. But it is the iPhone moment for enterprise for sure. In terms of reskilling and retooling people, that will have to happen. 6 out of 10 people will need to be retrained for this new economy, but it is a great opportunity. Most of the jobs they're doing right now are soul crushing. Wow, that is a very jaded and depressing take on the state of jobs.
Maybe.
And
I think you can take that multiple ways, right? It's, hey man,
qualify my job as soul crushing, bruising maybe, but not crushing.
See, you could choose to look at that. You could look at it as, hey man, like
Bill is
definitely
a lot of
the work
kind of guy.
Maybe, but a lot of the work we're having people do is a monotonous thing, right? This allows people to retrain and retool to have more fulfilling lives. It could be considered a very positive message.
Well, I like that. I like that point of view, Giles, and I think that is. It is. And I think that is the promise of AI is that it's going to make us. It's going to take the monotony out of your work. It's going to be your virtual assistant and do all the things that you don't want to do. Like you prompt it and give it instructions and it goes, and now you're uber productive. And I think that's the promise. I think we're still a bit in that hype cycle of the reality of it. And for me, to be honest with you, and just my personal opinion, is sometimes I find the prompting aspect of it to be almost, if not more tedious than the just doing of the thing that I want it to do in the first place. And so until I think you get really good and that communication with this amorphous like AI assistant becomes natural, then I'm not sure if we're quite there yet. I'm not quite sure if the typing of natural language into a text box and then feeding me back results is the optimal experience for how we are meant to interact with the AI. Maybe there's something in the future, but do think that there obviously is a lot of opportunity around AI. I think you see almost every, not just technology company, but like major companies. I think just recently you saw a huge investment in AI by Coca-Cola, which like it's a sugar water company. It's a manufacturer, distributor, logistics. It's a marketing company by large stretch of like everything they do is about marketing and branding. But Coca-Cola investing so much in AI, it shows that there is a huge amount of opportunity out there in the market. And so I think Bill's tapping into that sentiment for sure. Let's talk about what ServiceNow does, right? ServiceNow is all about, for maybe some of our users don't know about ServiceNow, right? But ServiceNow facilitates IT operations, help desk automation within large organizations. And just imagine the sorts of opportunities that exist in that space. If you've ever called a help desk, come on, those people need help. They need all the help they can get.
That's right. So what I would say about it's a very thought-provoking quote on this one, right? And as ever, I tend to take things to the extreme in my head. So what I would say that highlights outside of his quote is that there's a lot of blue collar workers out there whose big concern is that their jobs are being replaced by robots, right? If you look at what Tesla's doing, they've actually just got rid of a whole bunch of staff here in the Austin area because they'd managed to successfully automate a lot of stuff through robots, and now those blue collar workers are gone. Okay. So what it highlights, and is probably very good for Coursera, I might add, is the need to ensure you are educated in these things, because honestly, what this is doing is automating the simpler things in the world, right?
Yeah.
And I would argue that the soul crushing part is very pertinent in that statement, because it means that if you don't follow along on this stuff and find your new area and your new world of this stuff, you will be left behind.
Yeah.
And that, well, I won't go into all the ramifications of that. I think in many parts of the world we're seeing that as in general, but I think it's a very pertinent statement by Bill McDermott here, that if you're getting rid of the simpler things, then you need to become more complicated yourself.
I would totally agree with that. If you're in a role that can be replaced by a machine or can be automated in some way, that could be data entry, reviewing invoices, or like entering, like those types of positions, I would certainly define as soul crushing. Like I would certainly hate my life if that were what I did for a living. But I also think there's a lot of roles that are out there that aren't necessarily going to be replaced by AI. They're going to be augmented by AI.
Yeah, adjusted, for sure.
Yeah, and I think going back to even one of our earliest guests when we had Alex Babin on, the CEO of, what was his company's name? Oh gosh, I'm sorry, Alex. Geez, Zero Systems is what it was. In fact, thank you for that. But when we had Alex on, like one of the quotes that really resonated with me and still resonates with me at this time, he said, AI isn't going to replace all of our jobs, but it will replace the jobs that aren't using AI, right? Like it will, so people that are not using AI will be replaced. And I don't think that's going to be in every industry, but it's going to be pretty broad ranging. If you think about it, like I had some deck repairs I needed to do. Like that guy's not getting replaced by AI. But there's lots of people and lots of industries that will be. Not today. Maybe in 20 years or something, there'll be the deck builder bot 5,000 or something. They'll come out and fix my deck for me. So
I like that, the deck builder bot. I need to build decks out in Colorado, so I'm waiting for the deck builder bot 5,000 to come out.
Hey, man. I hear they do a good job.
So I think Bill's comment there is much more positive than your original statement there. I think it's much more positive for the future, I think.
I'm coming around on it.
All right. Shall we look at the next guy then?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right. This is our last one of this one here, so of this kind of podcast that we've got going on here. Nigel Vass, Vaz maybe, CEO of, you can have to tell me, you pronounce this quite well.
Is it
Publicist
Sapient or Publicist Sapient? I don't know. I'm
going to say Publicist Sapient. Anyway, it's a technology consulting firm, right? Speaks very deep to my heart, given that I spent my world automating and consulting things throughout my life, right? So I think companies are deploying generative AI on the spectrum of opportunities. Some are creating content for new products and services, unleashing people who historically have not been able to write code and can now create things faster. AI is moving us forward to a future where the solutions to more problems that couldn't be solved today are starting to become more accessible. Okay, that's interesting. Actually leads very much to some of our first podcasts where we talked about Power Platform and empowering the business user, right?
For sure.
You're on some sort of intelligence continuum. Ooh, that's a statement in itself. All of this course needs to be done responsibly, securely, and to protect. But I think what is exciting is how much stuff you can do today that you can do better and faster, and how much stuff you cannot do today, you will soon be able to do. There we go. So that's it.
Yeah.
So that actually speaks again to the guy I was speaking to yesterday, right? Where the whole point was feed the intelligent systems behind it, what you're trying to do, and then you get a better process out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the whole point of consulting, right? You hire experts to tell you how to get to the right direction, right? And things like that. I've previously worked in a consulting company, very much SharePoint. You want to use SharePoint, you're a Microsoft, you want to take advantage of your licensing and all this kind of stuff. This is the best way to do SharePoint and all this kind of stuff. I can tell you right now, and I know you've done this as well, we've made some huge mistakes. Like using SharePoint as your external website.
As most companies and consultants do. You go with what's the state of the art at the time, you go with it, and you do the best you can at the time that you can do it. I make no apologies for any of my past.
Do you know what? I absolutely followed what is considered best practice at the time. It was just rethought of 5 minutes later and changed.
I gave the best advice I could at the time.
Based on whether I was a beginner at the technology and you didn't know that or not, right? But what I will say is this. So human beings in general, this is going to be a very long-lasting, specific statement here. We struggle with repeating ourselves on history, right? Repeating the problems of history. And I would actually argue that a lot of this statement and consulting in general, right, is about keeping on with the current trends and things like that. But you could feed the past into AI, which is essentially what we're doing, right? We're feeding the past of human history to help us inform the future, right? So that's a very deep statement, isn't it? But as a consulting company, how important is that, right? Like you're being paid to be the experts, but you bring on new consultants all the time. You have to train them up. Wouldn't it be best if they have an immediate way to get a knowledge base to know what they're doing is actually a good idea or not from past understanding?
Yeah, that's a very deep take on this quote, Giles. That is we're talking about humanity and like the future of mankind and
like episode and the thing that falls down is like
Soylent Green, it's people. No, but you know what? Yeah, no, it is. And I agree with it. And I think to boil that down to maybe even a little bit more simplistic is like, how can we use these technologies to make mankind like better, to make sure that we're better off in the end? And if Nigel can harness that power of AI to make the consulting world great, I think that's a great thing. I would say that for looking at the ecosystem of AI and all the hype around it and how many technology companies and non-technologies are looking to implement AI into their operations, into their day-to-day, into their strategic future, right? Like I see AI as probably one of the greatest consulting money-making opportunities that ever was. And I think
Never ending.
that's what Nigel and Publicis Sapient are tapping into, right? There's endless opportunity in terms of automation of processes, customer experiences, employee experiences, support experiences, and those are all areas that are ripe for consulting dollars to be spent on those things. And if you get those things right, if you can get patterns and processes and technologies and starter kits and all the sort of things that make those things happen, and you can show those success stories that you've done for other companies, like people are going to come and they're going to want you to provide their services. And I think what he's also tapping into, which is he talks about doing these things responsibly and securely and protecting, and I assume he means things like the data that we're processing, the responsible AI, like we're not building biases into the things that we're building and stuff like that. Those are incredibly rich ecosystems of how to do that and how to do that well. And I think for the most part, to be just completely candid, I think we're still learning how to do that. We're still at the if you're on the continuum, the intelligence continuum, we're way on the left side right now in terms of this whole thing. And
sure,
but so when I hear the quote, that's the kind of stuff I'm thinking about. And I do think I've seen this in my day-to-day, right? I don't write code anymore. I'm not a designer. I'm not a artist. I don't write poetry, but I can do a reasonable job, at least of getting started with some of that stuff using AI. I can go to CoPilot or ChatGPT or something similar and ask it to write a script or write some kind of code for me. I can ask it to generate images. You're seeing music generation, video generation. Microsoft previewed this thing, which was, I can't remember the name of the model, but they showed it. It literally needs a single picture and a short clip of someone's voice, and it can generate a video of them speaking. In fact, me speaking right now, this is not me. This is an AI bot. I've been talking to you for an hour, Giles, and you didn't even know. So
and what the audience doesn't really know is that's actually your dog, and it's been turned into Patrick and speaking. So he's woofing.
On the intelligence continuum, the dogs are, I would say, they're up there. But no, the little rambly and but I think there's a lot to this quote, and I really do truly believe that AI is just a consultant's playground right now. It is, and I think one of the I saw there was a meme very recently on LinkedIn, and I love a good meme. And it was to the point of how quickly we become experts at the thing, and AI being the new thing. And all of us that are in technology, now we're quickly, I'm an AI strategist, and I'm an AI this, and I'm a prompt engineer, and a this or that.
Fake it till you make it.
He's probably the same guy that stole your lunch out of the refrigerator and messed up the last release on whatever project you were building.
I would actually argue that if you were going to coin any kind of phrase on this whole article, intelligence continuum has got to be it, right?
I think intelligence continuum.
Yes, I feel we're going to talk about that more in the future, right?
What is the intelligence continuum?
I don't know. I feel that memes could be made out of that for a start, but some kind of diagram, maybe.
I think you got dumb, pretty dumb, kind of smart, pretty smart. I don't know. I'm a country boy.
I was going to say, you went a bit southern there, but I would say a lot of this stuff with the AI, it's a continual cycle of improvement. And I think that's really what Nigel was talking about here. Is that the intelligent continuum here is it's going to continually learn itself, which then is then
you will
continually
soon
feed
be able
us,
to do.
which will then allow us to feed back in, and it's a constant cycle. That's right.
And I think there was a quote recently from Sam Altman at OpenAI talking about how effectively, like, the technology we have today is like a toy compared to what's coming out in the future. And the general direction is the ultimate goal, obviously, is not obviously, but is what they call, was it general intelligence, or like, it's basically like a computer that thinks for itself. And that's obvious. I hope we're years and years away from that. I'm not sure if I want to see that in my lifetime, but that's what these guys are trying to build, is a computer that actually thinks and is conscious, or simulates consciousness.
True, but at the same time, there's a lot of people pushing the brakes on. If you look at the theme across all of this stuff is about assistance of what you're trying to do, right? And surely the cleverness of all of this stuff, the visionaries that we're talking about here, are talking about how do you apply what is coming out to make your profits, your life, whatever, better, right? So
look, Giles, it's all fine and good until the network becomes self-aware, and we all know what happens.
James Cameron has told us.
Sarah O'Connor. Terminator, folks. I'm talking about Terminator, okay? Like,
that's right. Now we can get sued by Carolco, right? Oh no, they've gone.
We have so many subpoenas in the mail this week or this month. Oh man. So look, I think this is all very insightful comments from the various CEOs. Really good article from Stephanie Mehta. Shout out to her. Thank you for providing the sounding board for our podcast today. We'll obviously link the article in our social media post and in our show notes and whatnot. I think there's a lot going on. I think there's a lot to learn and a lot to be achieved with AI. Obviously, an area that's going to continue to evolve, and we hope to continue to talk about it. But we're also hoping not to only talk about AI. We want to talk about other topics too. I think this is a pretty interesting conversation. I think we got some good stuff out of this, some good mileage out of the article here.
And I will say that Stephanie clearly writes a lot about this kind of stuff, and there's a whole bunch of other links to other things here, like AI ready workforces and making yourself irreplaceable in the age of AI. I'm reading here as well. I've actually spent some time reading some of these other articles since you pointed this out to me. This is, if you want to make yourself, useful in the AI world of these things, it's actually important to read this stuff to get the inspiration, right? Because if anything that you need from a prompt engineering point of view is the inspiration in the first place to know what to write. And
for sure,
what better way than to look at this kind of stuff to really get your own views and your commentary like we're doing here. So
So Giles, awesome. I think we're going to be we'll be back with the folks in June for our next episode. We'll drop this on all the social media platforms and podcast platforms, and where you go to find us. And if you don't, then you probably haven't found us. So
you didn't listen to this then, huh?
Maybe listen to some AI to help you out with that.
Maybe AI will be fed by our podcast.
Absolutely. Any parting thoughts, my friend?
Do you know what? I can see us talking about AI a lot more because it's far-reaching into so many subjects, right? It's struggled a little bit with the continual use of talking about AI, but I'm getting more into the use of that. Actually, I don't know that you can get away from it, even if you try. So
I think that's the point, right? I think it's starting to infiltrate our lives in many ways. So
that's right.
I'm not getting choked up. I think I just need a drink of water. But
it's been a great discussion, and I look forward to our next episode. I know we've got some plans around some of that stuff and security and things like that. So it's going to be good talking about that, and speaks well to my heart around compliance and.
Yeah, I think that's our next planned episode. We'll have somebody from the information security space who can hopefully take us through and talk about some of the AI topics and some of the big concerns around that big organizations are dealing with. So we'll be back with everybody in June. Really looking forward to it. You want to take us out on this episode, Giles?
I will. Yeah. So like Patrick said, you can find us in all the usual good places, our website, buy stuff if you want. But podcast places, Google, Apple, whatever. LinkedIn, of course, is where we will advertise this. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope you enjoy these kind of discussion episodes when we are a bit light on guests. Please comment and all that kind of stuff, and we'll take your feedback into account in future episodes. And Patrick, thank you very much for finding the article, and we'll see you next time, right?
All right.
All right.
Thanks, Giles.
Have a good day, everybody. Bye.